All right, let's dive in. Today, we are tackling a term that you see literally everywhere, corporate social responsibility, or CSR. We're going to peel this thing back like an onion to figure out what it is, why it's so darn complicated, and why the most important part of it might be the one we talk about the least.
I mean, it seems simple enough, right? Companies doing good things. But behind all the headlines about planting trees or having ethical supply chains, there's this tangled web. Is this about real, genuine values? Or is it just good PR? Is it about saving the planet, or is it really about saving the bottom line?
And you know what? That confusion is totally real. As CSR scholar Sandra Waddick put it, the field is full of parallel and sometimes confusing universes. That just perfectly captures how fragmented this whole thing is. You have researchers looking at it from all these different angles, and it feels like they're talking about completely different things. So our job today is to try and bring those universes together. Okay, so to get us all on the same page, let's start with a solid definition. This one comes from a major review of the field. Now, a couple of things here are super important. First, context-specific. That just means CSR is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. And second, stakeholders' expectations. That's everybody from investors and employees all the way to the wider community. It's all about balancing that famous triple bottom line: economic, social, and environmental performance.
So to make sense of all this, we're going to treat CSR like an onion. We'll start on the outside with all the external pressures. Then we'll move into the middle layer, the company itself. And finally, we'll get to the very core, the people inside. After that, we'll look at a new way to map this all out and see what the future holds for CSR. So let's start with that outer layer. This is all about the outside world looking in. We're talking about the powerful external forces that push and pull and pressure companies into doing CSR, whether they really wanted to in the first place or not.
And just think about it for a second. Why does a huge company suddenly start talking about its carbon footprint or totally change its labor practices? It almost never just happens in a vacuum, right? There are always these powerful forces at play. And the main drivers are probably what you'd expect. There's huge pressure from stakeholders. That's us, the consumers, but also the media and activist groups. Then you've got the more official stuff, government regulations you have to follow, industry standards you need to meet, and sometimes even a company's own shareholders pushing for major change. So a company gives in to the pressure. They launch some big new green initiative, or they publish a fancy sustainability report. What's the payoff? What actually happens when they do the right thing at this level?
Well, the research here is pretty darn clear. The single most consistent result is a big boost in corporate reputation. And that's not just some vague feel-good thing. It translates into real benefits, like more customer loyalty, people thinking more highly of their products, and, of course, smoother relationships with all those groups who are pressuring them to begin with. Okay, so we've peeled back layer one. Now let's go one level deeper, inside the company itself. We're looking past the external pressures now to really understand the organization's own motivations. What's going on inside the black box?
And this gets to the classic age-old debate when it comes to CSR. Is a company doing good because it's the right thing to do, or because it's the profitable thing to do? And as you can probably guess, the answer is, well, it's a bit of both.
The motivations really break down into two main camps. On one side, you've got what they call instrumental drivers. Think of this as the business case, using CSR as a tool to get a leg up on the competition or make more money. On the other side, you have normative drivers. This is the moral case, stuff that comes from a genuine sense of duty or is just part of the company's core values. And of course, a company can be driven by both at the same time.
But does it actually pay to be good? Well, the evidence is a mixed bag. This chart sums up over 100 studies, and you can see that while, most of them found a positive link between CSR and financial performance, a whole lot of them didn't. So the big takeaway here is that a direct financial payoff is just not a guarantee. And that's exactly why this debate is still raging. But, and this is a big but, focusing only on that direct financial link misses a huge piece of the puzzle. Even if the immediate profit isn't crystal clear, doing CSR brings all these other incredibly valuable benefits. The research consistently shows it leads to better management, more efficient operations, higher quality products, and it helps attract both top-notch investors and a more diverse workforce.
Okay, we've peeled back the outer layer of public pressure and the middle layer of corporate strategy. Now we get to the core, the very heart of the onion. And this is where it gets really, really interesting, because now we're talking about the people, the employees, the managers, the leaders, the ones who actually make all this CSR stuff happen.
But here's the crazy part. The authors of this review went through hundreds of articles to see where researchers are even looking. And check out this chart. 57% of the research is on the organization, 33% is on those external institutions, and the individual?
4%. Only 4%. Just let that sink in for a second. All of these huge corporate strategies and big public statements are decided on, implemented by, and affect individual human beings. Yet, we've barely studied them. It is a massive, massive blind spot in how we understand CSR.
So what does that tiny little 4% slice of research actually tell us? What do we know about the people who are the real engine of CSR? And just as important, how does doing CSR affect them?
Well, the things that drive individuals are deeply personal. The number one factor, it's seeing that your direct supervisor, your boss, is genuinely committed to CSR. It's not about some memo from the CEO, it's about what your manager does. After that, it's about connecting with an employee's personal values, fulfilling their need to do meaningful work, and just, being trained and made aware of what the company's even trying to do.
And when individuals get engaged like that, the results are powerful. We're not just talking about happier employees. We're talking about people who are more engaged and more committed. They identify more strongly with the company, which leads to higher retention and better performance in their actual jobs. They're also more likely to go that extra mile for the company and their coworkers. And, as we saw before, it makes the company an absolute magnet for new talent.
So, we have these three separate layers of the onion. The big problem is they are almost never studied together, and that's why the authors propose a new map, a kind of integrated model to see how the external world, the organization, and the individual all connect and influence each other.
So the first step is to rethink what drives CSR. Instead of just internal versus external, they suggest we should think about it as reactive versus proactive. Reactive is when a company feels like it has to do CSR. It's responding to all that outside pressure. Proactive is when the company wants to do it. It's driven by this desire to fulfill needs, align with its values, and create new kinds of value. Their map also has something they call the 4 Ps. These are factors that can totally change the outcome of a CSR action. So, for example, a recycling program might be a huge success at a company where the people are really into it, but a total flop at one where they aren't. The place, so the country or community context, the price or the cost of the investment, and the company's profile, like how big or visible it is. All of these things can change the result. It really shows why one size does not fit all.
And this brings us to the final, most forward-looking part of our explainer. If we've learned anything, it's at the individual level. That little 4% is where the biggest questions and the biggest opportunities really are. And this leads to a concept called microfoundations.
Microfoundations of CSR. It sounds complicated, but it just means that to understand a really big, macro-level thing like a corporation's social performance, you first have to understand the micro-level building blocks, the actions, the decisions, and the interactions of the individual people inside that system. It's all about connecting individual psychology to those huge corporate-level outcomes.
So, in the end, we're left with this question. We talk about corporate responsibility, but what is a corporation if not just a collection of people? If we completely ignore the motivations, the values, and the behaviors of those individuals, are we missing the entire point? The future of truly understanding CSR isn't just about looking at a company from the outside, it's about understanding it from its human core.